A very warm welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Hardik Mistry, and today I'll be accompanied by my colleague Kim Songco. We also have Jeff, who will be taking us through these slides, and then he'll be keeping track of the questions as well behind the scenes. Kim and I have had the privilege of working on a number of different projects. And today we are very, very fortunate to be here to present to you all these slides and also to share our perspective in terms of the experiences and knowledge we have gained through the IDMP projects we've been working on with different clients so that you can better prepare for your IDMP journey. The main purpose, I would say, for today's webinar is to provide you with a quick snapshot of the recent developments from the EMEA around EU IG version 2, target operating model, timelines, and how you can leverage people, process, and technology functions in preparation for the upcoming IDMP mandate. Now, I know during the course of this webinar, you might have questions or you might need further clarifications. And therefore, I would kindly request you if you can hold off your questions until the end of this presentation. Also, in case we don't get through all the questions, and if you have any questions at some point in the near future, then we can always get back to you with answers offline following this webinar session. So without any further delays, let's begin this session. So in terms of the agenda, so we would like to go through the significance of the IDMP just to set the scene. And then we'll go through the overall IDMP timelines that we have received from the EMEA around the EUIG version 2, 2.1, 2.2, and version 3 as well. And then we'll look into the timelines around the PMS iteration 1. Then we'll take a deep dive into the IDMP attributes and the people, process, technology challenges and how you can leverage some of the approaches to overcome some of these challenges. So that would be led by Kim. And then we'll also talk through some of the strategic approaches that you can take to overcome, the challenges that you might be facing within your organization. And then at the very end, we'll take Q&As. With that, I would like to introduce myself first. So my name is Hardik Mistry. I've been working in pharmaceutical industry since past, I would say, 12, 13 years now. My areas of expertise mainly lie within IDMP, XCV-MPD, CMC, regulatory information management system, and overall regulatory data. I'm also a certified change management practitioner, and I've delivered a variety of organizational change and data integrity projects. Just to give you a little bit more background in terms of my knowledge around IDMP and XCV-MPD. So in the past, I've headed XCV-MPD process optimization projects and data migration projects as well to support the end-to-end system implementation. I've also worked on a number of clients on the IDMP assessment projects. And then I've also successfully helped a client to set up the data factory consisting of 20 to 25 team members, helping the client to achieve, the agency deadline around XCV-MPD compliance. With that, I'm gonna stop here and I would like Kim to introduce himself quickly, please.
Sure. Hi. Hello, everyone. And, thank you, Hardik. So, same as Hardik, I am extremely delighted to welcome everyone today on the call. My name is Kim Songco. I'm a senior consultant here at Red Nucleus R&D under the Strategy and Change Division. So, just a brief introduction of myself. I am an experienced R&D operations professional who has successfully led process optimization, system implementation, and stakeholder enablement for both clinical and regulatory operations teams. I have experience in developing and executing strategies to ensure program success for clinical and regulatory information management systems. and processes. So prior to me joining Red Nucleus, I supported the operations teams of a tier one pharmaceutical company and help implement new IT systems with them. And I have a track record of helping teams effectively increase utilization and compliance of systems through business process optimization initiatives. I've developed SOPs, guidance documents, and I've trained teams across the globe. So, in terms of my educational background, my graduate studies was focused on business administration, strategic leadership, and healthcare management. So, that concludes my short introduction. I'll hand it over back to Hardik so that he can walk us through the significance of IDMP. Over to you, Hardik.
So before we start any further, I would like to just say a few words in terms of where we are in terms of IDMP. So there has been a lot of discussion around IDMP since past few years. And at this stage, it is very, very apparent that IDMP finally is becoming a reality. And soon the industry will be mandated to comply with the IDMP submissions. In terms of why you should care, in a nutshell, I would say in a simple language, we are all aware that since few decades, pharmaceutical industries, healthcare agencies, and healthcare providers globally have been facing a fundamental issue of product inconsistencies across the regulators, resulting in greater challenges while carrying out the assessment and scientific evaluation of those medicinal products. Now, you have been experiencing or have experienced in the past other challenges as well around communication, transparency, probably decision-making process as well, regulatory actions, safety reporting, and the product launch issues as well. Now, to overcome these challenges and improve patient safety, the European Medicine Agencies is in the process of implementing these 5 standards developed by the ISOs for the identification of medicinal products. And these standards are just highlighted on the screen. We all aware what those standards are. Also, EMEA is implementing or have implemented or in process of implementing the SPO, which is the 4 data management services through which the IDMP will be delivered. In terms of the legislation within Europe, we have the regulation driving IDMP as the 520/2012 Article 25 and 26, which mandates the European Union member states, marketing authorization holders, and the EMEA to make use of the ISO IDMP standards via the soon-to-be mandatory submission of this data to health agencies. In terms of the global stand in terms of the ISO IDMP, where they are, let me just give you a quick snapshot of where the other agencies are within the IDMP journey. So we all know that EMEA is the driving force when it comes to implementing the IDMP. It's a regulatory requirement within Europe, whereas within other regions, it hasn't become a legislation or a regulatory requirement. But I would say within US FDA, they are actively involved in many activities when it comes to the adoption of IDMP. I would say they have been working way before the EMEA in terms of IDMP, in terms of the SPL. And I know with IDMP in Europe, they have been working very, very closely in regards to the synchronization and making sure there's an alignment between the GASRS and the EU SRS. In terms of the Canada, I don't think they have any plans yet, as of yet, but I do know that they are implementing the structured product monograph using the SPL, HL7, and IDMP standards. For Japan, they are observing And I don't think they have any plans as of yet to implement, but they might be considering the IDMP at some point in the near future. Now, coming back to the legislation in Europe, so if you don't comply, then any non-compliance can result into 5% of the fines of the total European revenue. In addition to the mandate with the new target operating model, the IDMP data will be required from the start of the drug life cycle. There is, pre-approval submissions compared to the existing XCVMPD standard, where data is submitted at the stage of post-approval. So there's a SWIFT of that model as well, in addition to the mandate. Therefore, I would say if you play a role in the product life cycle, then it is very, very important that you start your IDMP journey sooner than later. We would also urge to you that ISO IDMP is just not seen as one of the many compliance activity, but rather as an opportunity to establish data-driven and information management processes. And in the long run, I can bet that many potential benefits can be realized for patients who uses your medicines, regulators, and the overall industry, where they can form a common product language culture within the organization, but also within the overall healthcare communities. You can also gain operational excellence by the improved collaboration and integration of technologies, processes, and data. Obviously, there would be an advantage around prevention of falsified medicines. And there would be improvisation to, I would say, the cross-border e-prescriptions, and there would be improvisation to the signal detection when it comes to the patient safety. So in summary, it's a regulatory requirement. First of all, any non-compliance may result into fines. IDMP data will be used for signal detections and ICSR processing, improvising the patient safety. It can help with falsified medicine shortages and also product recalls. And with the overall end-to-end IDMP implementation, there would be gain to the process efficiencies as well. So yes, there are lots of benefits when it comes to IDMP. Now, let's take a look at the timelines when the industry will be mandated to comply with these requirements. So we all now know that the implementation of the overall IDMP would be iterative. So with the first iteration focus on the PMS around the authorized medicinal products, followed by the iteration 2, which will be focused on investigational medicinal products. Iteration 3 will be focused on clinical particulars, and then Iteration 4 will be focused on the package product and batch IDs. The first iteration around PMS covers the subset of the ISO IDMP data fields, and with the EUIG version 2, which was published back in February, 22nd of February, it was like a trigger for the industry to start preparing for the PMS iteration 1. With that publication, EMEA did publish plans to release the version 2.1 and version 2.2. Looking at what EMEA published recently, it seems that version 2 will be focused mainly on the high priority items, and this is because EMEA was very overwhelmed due to the thousands of the comments that they received, and therefore they just want to make sure that all comments are addressed appropriately to better support the industry. So version 2.1 will be then focused on the should and could, and then version 2.2 will be focused on the rest of the data fields remaining after should and could and should from version 2. In terms of PMS iteration 1, EMEA will be following a stepwise approach. So for step one, we'll be focused on the centrally authorized procedure medicinal products, and then step two will be focused on the non centrally authorized products like your national licenses, mutually recognized procedure products, and the decentralized procedure products. Now, enforcement of the non-CAP submissions will not happen until the structured EF is in place in support of the national competent authorities assessments. Whereas with the CAP, there would be a transition period from the release of the version 2, so which is at least 12 months. So industry will have at least 12 months to start preparing for the CAP iteration 1 submissions, where the industry will be encouraged to start submitting the data. And then following that, there will be at least 12 months before the PMS step 1 will be enforced. And that enforcement would be just for the CAP submissions. Now, the MH will have the option to also submit their non-CAP licenses along with CAP, or they can continue using the current XCVMPD process to submit the non-CAP submissions. Now, EMEA still has not committed for the clock start. However, they do plan to provide some kind of notice to the industry at some point in the near future. But in general, the recommendation from the EMEA is for the industry and for the vendors to start preparing for the IDMP, considering the 2 years time frame. So let's take a closer look now at the target operating model when it comes to the step 1 and step 2. The step 1 focuses on CAP licenses, and step 2 focuses on the non-CAP licenses. So for CAP submission process, the FHIR message will be submitted with your dossier in your ECT working documents folder. Once submitted, the FHIR message contents will be evaluated as part of the procedure. And then the final FHIR message will be provided with your closing sequence and is loaded into PMS. So this is applicable for the submission where the ECTD comes into place. If there is no closing sequence, or if your submission is not part of the ECTD submission, then the FHIR message can be submitted via API directly into PMS. So this would be the overall process when it comes to the CAP. When it comes to the non-CAP, the process is not very different, but as I mentioned earlier, the MH can choose not to transition to the FHIR format. Instead, they can continue using the current XCVMPD process. But if you do decide to choose to transition to FHIR for all your registration, which is the CAP and non-CAP, the MH will have to create the FHIR message and then submit via API after your submission is approved. So this is for your initial submissions or for any variation that you will be submitting. And once you get the approval, that's when you will submit the FHIR message. Now, the timelines for the submission will be the same as the current process, which is 30 days for any variations and then 15 days for your new initial MAs. You can also submit your FHIR message with ECTD, but let me remind you that it will not be assessed by the regulators. This is due to the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, they would like to wait, the EMA would like to wait until the structured EF in place to support the national competent authorities to carry out the assessment and check the FHIR message along with that procedure. Now, when it comes to the feedback loop, the expectations are that EMEA will continue sending the validation correction messages to the MH via the existing current third ACK process. Obviously, you will have an option to work on your third ACK messages, or you can just disregard completely. It's entirely up to you. In terms of the synchronization between the PMS and XCV-MPD. There would be a feedback loop again, but I would say that feedback loop will stay until EMEA transition everything to the PMS. So going forward, regardless whether you decide to use the FAR message or the XCV-MPD, there is going to be a kind of the connection between the XCV-MPD and PMS to make sure that the data is synchronized all the time. So I hope that has given you some insight into the plans around the step 1 and step 2 and what it all entails in terms of the process when it comes to the centrally authorized procedure products and non-centrally authorized products. Now let's take a look at the volume of data and the ownership of these data attributes before we take a deep dive into people, process, and technology challenges. So as you can see here, the fancy, you all must have seen the world famous IDMP wedding cake, but this is just the subset of the full IDMP data model. The IDMP data attributes when it comes to the PMS iteration 1 involves 4 to 5 times more data compared to the current XCV-MPD standards. And this is huge, compared to what we are used to submitting with the XCV-MPD. Also with the published target operating model, we just looked in previous slides by the EMA, with the pre-authorization model, data must be collected, transformed, and submitted during the early stage of the drug product lifecycle, that is at the discovery phase. Now, this is a big shift in the way we submit data compared to the current existing processes, which is the post-approval process. And therefore, IDMP will have a significant impact on the functions. And when it comes to functions, we have tried to highlight some of the functions which are directly impacted by the IDMP. So a careful consideration is required here, whether a centralized or decentralized approach could be applied for your management of the IDMP attributes, and where technology can be leveraged to avoid any manual hands-off across the functional silos of your organization and the entire product lifecycle of your products. So let's now take a look at the different approaches you can leverage in terms of managing the data attributes when it comes to the full IDMP. So it mainly falls into 2 categories, which is centralized and decentralized. So centralized is the data processing activities performed at a single location, whereas the decentralized, the data is processed within different locations. In terms of the examples within centralized, it could be your corporate office, whereas with the decentralized, it could be the affiliates regional offices. Now, both centralized and decentralized approaches will have their pros and cons. So let's take a quick look into each of these. So with centralized approach, the main benefits would be, it will help to achieve maximum data integrity and minimize data redundancy. It would be much easier to manage your data, change, reorganize, and analyze the data, and the overall data administration will be much simpler compared to the decentralized approach. Obviously, it comes with cons as well. So dependency will be there on the data provider when it comes to exchanging of information between the affiliates and the centrally responsible people. There would be data that might be processed slowly because of the intake of the data coming from different regions, and then that could become a risk in terms of the bottleneck for your projects. In terms of the decentralized approach, again, the benefits could be less time for processing the data because of the lesser volume. And then you can also gain some data accuracy and completeness because it's managed at the regional level, and usually the affiliates are kind of a subject matter experts, and they know inside and out of what data they are handling for their own regions. It comes with cons as well. So the interaction between the data stewards and the affiliates could be limited, which can affect the data standardization. So if there's no process around the collaboration communication, then it can affect the overall data integrity. Obviously, more effort could be required to coordinate the data, and also to control the data could be a big challenge when it comes to decentralize. Now, both the above approaches can provide a wide spectrum of possible combinations, and therefore we can suggest that a geographical location can be selected here, utilizing the hybrid approach of both above approaches we just went through, which can really, look into the activities for the IDMP when it comes to your processes, data collection, validation, coding of your data, and then analyzing your overall IDMP data as well. So I guess the hybrid approach can really work in this case. But again, it's entirely up to you what suits you the best. And again, it all depends on your product portfolio as well. Okay, so now let me turn to Kim, who will walk us through the process technology and people functions, and how you can start addressing some of the challenges. And we'll also go through some of the activities that you can look into while overcoming some of these challenges. So over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Hardik. All right. So, thank you, Hardik, for covering the importance of IDMP, also the foreseen timelines and the data attributes. So, if you've just joined and missed our introduction earlier, today my name is Kim Songco, and I'll be providing you with an overview on how the transformation of people, process, and technology can support in building your organization's IDMP capability. All right, so we would like to focus your attention on people, process, and technology. And for today, we're going to start with people. So we often forget that it's the people who form and run the business. They act like a linchpin holding everything together. So, in general, discussions on IDMP mainly focus on data, technology, and process. But these discussions do not focus on people specifically. People, data, technology, and process are all interlinked, where nothing can function without people. With IDMP and any new regulation, it's the people who are most affected as it impacts their current ways of working. So with the IDMP regulation, a number of cross-functional stakeholders, will be impacted as the data, processes, and technologies within IDMP touches, organizational-wide people, as what you can see on the screen, regulatory affairs, pharmacovigilance, clinical, med affairs, marketing, commercial, supply chain, to name a few. And, I won't go through the entire list here, but you can see it as on the screen what the impact is. So due to the organizational wide impact, it's very important that a robust data governance model is defined, implemented, and integrated, which will enable all the stakeholders to be involved, assigning specific responsibilities, making decisions, controlling and managing data. Establishing this knowledge, increasing transparency, and ensuring compliance, and most importantly, a governance model that will, sort of promote the culture of data centricity within an organization. So, if we put up that data governance model, this will make your program as effective as possible. So to support the people function effectively, certainly collaborative efforts is needed to ensure processes are well defined, which allows people to easily understand and use the right technology tools in which it is user friendly and reduces people's manual work on a daily basis. So let's go ahead, Jeff, to the next slide. So there are three things that we'd like to focus on, especially when we look at the problem for IDMP and the challenges that requires collaborative solutions. So first is putting up a data governance model. And for this certain area, companies need to establish a strong data governance model. So given the large number of data required, organizations are face challenges in sustaining a strong data governance model culture. And also where multiple functions own data that goes into IDMP, this also poses the need to establish the ownership and governance of data to ensure compliance, also ensure data integrity, and also promote decision-making authority. And governance is multi-level. At this point in time, the most important thing is to have a strong sponsorship, from the beginning as you start your IDMP journey so that IDMP gets prioritized within your organization. Next slide, please, Jeff. So moving on to data integrity. So since data integrity affects both the people involved and the data itself, it is a two-way feedback loop where we can have positive and negative implications on each other. So the people's contribution, may it be positive or negative, affects the overall data integrity. So positive effects could certainly lead to operational efficiencies. And on the other hand, negative effects can be compliance risks, which can arise from data integrity being not prioritized within an organization. But on the flip side, as we think this through, the overall data integrity that you have within your organization affects people's trust in the data, which can influence, how their day-to-day use of the data or day-to-day interaction with the data is. So, it can influence their use, and also it can lead to manual workaround. And then lastly, we are going to talk about data functional forums. And this is the last component of the people piece. So for data functional forums, there's a need to identify either a group or network of data stewards who own the data, regardless of system, source documentation, or other areas that we can see. They monitor the and input. Apologies there. They monitor the input and proliferation of data throughout the various functions with a common goal to ensure that the business rules are followed and the data integrity is promoted across the organization. So for data stewards, they will play such an important role within the overall data integrity, data governance process, and program success. So we move forward to the next part, which is process. All right. So for process, depending on where you are depending on where your organization is, in its IDMP journey, a new process will have to be defined and/or existing processes will need to be refined. So, within the process section of our discussion today, I will be touching on 4 components as you see, front and center here on the screen. So to leverage the full IDMP potential, there should be data-driven business processes. There should also be integration to various data sources and also integration between business processes. And lastly, there must be robust training strategy so that processes will be followed easily. So go ahead, Jeff, to the next slide, please. So let's start off with data. And the use of the IDMP framework as the base will build on and build that data-driven process model that suits the needs of your company. With a business driver that also addresses compliance requirements. So ownership is only the first part of data governance and data stewardship. There certainly needs to be, the understanding around it so that it could be followed. And these data-driven processes can be defined through such activities as identifying data attributes, identifying the sources of these data attributes, performing a gap analysis, to define the business and technology requirements that you may have, and also looking at data collection, data transformation, and the processes around how your organization submits data and information to the European health authorities. So next slide, Jeff, please. All right, the next part is around integration. And currently, we're talking about this in the context of business integration, and pretty much optimized data handoffs. So certainly, cross-functional collaboration must be well defined to enable successful operation, of an end-to-end process. In some cases, I tend to think of this as more of like a relay race where everyone has to be in sync while everyone is doing their part when like handing off that baton to the other part of the organization. So that's just a thought from my side. Next slide, please, Jeff. All right, so we talk about training now. So, an overall training program certainly has to be embedded. So this, this just doesn't include internal stakeholders, but also should, consider external stakeholders, such as your CMOs, your contract manufacturing organizations, and your CROs. So lastly, training will be required for business processes and new technologies that come out of this entire IDMP journey. So certainly, a robust training strategy must be put in place to support those processes that your organization will be putting in place. And then the next part is around process. So as I mentioned earlier, new processes, will need to be defined, and this is going to be across the organization. It will be defined by the business, by IT, and some other functions such as data architecture. Just to identify how you are collecting the data that's needed, how you're compiling the data, and how this should be submitted to the health authorities. So, processes, must be augmented with technology to control the quality and the relationship of the data. And since IDMP components such as PMS are new and more guidance has just come out, expect that your organization will need to create and design, processes to support your organization's operations within this area. So currently on the screen, we have a generic example to show on how your organization or industry users can align internally within the organization to what the EMA guidelines are for spore maintenance. And then next slide, Jeff, please. So moving over to technology, and as we've covered people, process, and tech, now we are going to talk about technology. So from a technology standpoint, there are four main areas that we believe can address the problem that technology is required certainly for full IDMP support. So the first one is around submission compilation. So this would include data collection, transformation of data. The next part is around innovative technology. So this revolves around natural language processing, structured content authoring, like Directus Pro. And we have the third item that we have here, which is data repositories. So for data repositories, we certainly need to do investigational gap analysis and also look at possible data integrations and also having a robust data governance to maintain and sustain this process. And then the last bit is around integration platforms. So we look at the Spore APIs, the IDMP future solutions in place, and also RIM system integrations. So with the support from the people function, we ensure that business process requirements are well defined. This will be key to any technology solution implementation, and that this will drive those technical requirements to support the business processes. And let's look at each of these components and dive in deeply. For IDMP submission compilation, as you can see here on the screen, there are multiple stakeholders. So clearly the challenge would be how to collect the information and transform the product data, from those existing, cross-functional areas. So really it's mashing all of them up together. And then the next part is around innovative technology. So for this part, industry should take advantage of innovative technological solutions available to gain and operationalize efficiencies. So the first part is around natural language processing, which converts unstructured data to structured data. That's certainly an innovative solution in the IDMP space. Also, another area for your organization to explore is a technology solution that enables structured content authoring, and promotes automated extraction of label information. That is also required for IDMP compliance. So moving over to the next slide, we are talking about data repositories. And for data repositories, I'd like to focus your attention that data required for IDMP submissions exist at various cross-functional data repositories. This poses a challenge to organizations within the industry to consolidate the information into one data repository for IDMP submission. So certainly an area that you must focus on as you go through, your IDMP journey. And then next is integration platforms. So for integration platforms, data is often siloed between different departments, so they need to integrate the data into your overall future IDMP solution. The industry should define a strategic transformative phase approach covering the assessment, preparation, the transition phase before IDMP data could be submitted to the EMA. You know, we identify and define a robust strategic vision for the IDMP submission technology, which can support transmission of the IDMP message in FIRE format together, within the ECTD, working folder for a specific regulatory application. By possibly implementing solutions such as master data management for all product data. um, you know MAH organizations can ensure consistency in product data used for regulatory submissions across the organization. This can also serve as a foundation to apply IDMP standards when generating product data. Establishing a data governance organization will certainly drive internal standards and definitions to reduce unnecessary rework and ensure that product data is properly managed to satisfy all applicable business requirements, brought about by IDMP. So, that concludes my overview on the transformation for people, process, and technology in helping build your organization's IDMP capability. So now I'm handing it over back to Hardik for the next part of the webinar, which is around the strategic approach to overall challenges.
Thank you so much, Kim, for the great overview on people, process, and technology. So um, we would just like to summarize, some of the key activities here in a form of the takeaways that you can start tackling within these 4 phases. So the 4 phases mainly are gather, assess, plan, and execute. So um, in terms of the activities that you can start looking into as part of your IDMP journey, or if you haven't started your IDMP journey yet, then these are some activities that you can start focusing on, and that will really help, towards your IDMP readiness. So start gathering, the requirements in terms of the business processes and the data requirements needed for the IDMP submissions. Start identifying your business key stakeholders, and also start identifying the existing business processes that you might have for the in support of the other regulatory processes and the IDMP submissions. Start locating, the data within the different system that might exist, or within the unstructured format like documents as well. And then that for you can start doing a gap analysis when it comes to the data and the processes that will help you to identify where the focus needs to be and where you need to bridge the gaps for the future state. In terms of the planning, start looking at your OCM activities, which is your overall change management activities. Establish your data governance. So as Kim mentioned earlier around the data governance, kind of define your data governance strategy, define your data governance plan, define the data stewardships, bring the right stakeholders on board, um, define your future state processes, and how you're going to collect the data for the full IDMPs or PMS iteration 1. So again, depending on your overall vision for the IDMP, some companies might focus on capturing everything that's needed for the full IDMP, or you can take a phase approach where just take a chunk of what will be mandated for the iteration 1 and work on it. In terms of the technology, start looking at your IT landscape in terms of what systems are currently available in support of the IDMP. if the current system can host your IDMP data, or you'll need new systems. So as Kim mentioned, within the technology workstream, you can also look into the innovative technologies, which will help you with the manual hands-off, and you can gain process efficiencies because you can use the NLP, you can use softwares like DirectX Pro, which will help you with the structured content authoring. That way you can gain process efficiencies. Um, Start monitoring, the new and the refined processes for the overall compliance. Start looking into what strategy you want to go ahead in terms of the centralized and decentralized approaches. Start looking into the target operating model, whether you want to tackle, the CAP and non-CAP together, or you want to just tackle CAP. So this kind of things you need to start asking yourself and your key stakeholders on your IDMP journey. When it comes to the OCM, again, we would like to focus on this snake diagram of the OCM. It really explains you in a very simple language where within OCM you need to really focus on. And I really cannot emphasize enough on the need of the OCM because of the IDMP and because of the organization-wide impact. It is very important that you have the robust change management program define and implement it, and I would say make it as an integral part. Make it an integral part. It will really help you, with the stakeholders involved, engaged, counted, consulted, and informed, throughout your IDMP journey. With the stakeholder analysis, I would say it's the first and the most important building block to your effective organization, because obviously you'll need the right stakeholders to get the buy-in for your IDMP journey as well. Start carrying out the risk and the gap analysis. Ensure gaps identified and then the risk are mitigated, whether it's for data, whether it's for your processes, whether it's for your technology. Have a communication strategy in place. So ensure the right stakeholders hear the right message at the right time. Also ensure there is a feedback loop. It will really help, maintain communication both ways. So ensure there is a mechanism for a two-way communication and not just one-way communication. And then you can define a change advocate network, which can really help you out with facilitating some of this two-way communication. So for me, my key message would be, have a common language in place when it comes to the OCM or your IDMP journey. Maintain continuity when it comes to IDMP, because it's not going to be just 1 year or 2 year effort. IDMP is going to continue for many years to come, and then build on it and then reinforce as well. So with that, I would just like to thank you all for your active participation, and then I think we have some time for the Q&A, so we'll take a few questions that you might have.
So thanks, Hardik and Kim, for that great presentation. We do actually have quite a few questions coming through here in the chat. So the first one that I see is, we are MAH with no IDMP work started yet. Which activity should we initiate to meet submissions of IDMP?
Okay. Kim, I can take that question if that's okay.
Sure, Hardik.
So yeah, so as I explained, a bit earlier, and I would like to focus your attention on the slide around the key takeaways. So, but just to answer your question again, it's a great question. We do appreciate the fact that not many organizations have started the IDMP journey yet. So again, to really focus on the main area and to kind of kick off on the IDMP journey, do your due diligence. I think that's the first and the most foremost thing that you can start. When it comes to due diligence, start doing the IDMP overall data assessment. That will really help you to identify where the data lies, who are the data owners, who would be accountable going forward, where the data is coming from, whether it's in systems, whether it's in documents, what transformation level will be required. So I think IDMP data assessment is a key to your IDMP journey. Also, as part of the due diligence, you can focus on the systems. You can focus on the processes. As I mentioned earlier, initiate your OCM, to make your stakeholders aware, and you will need buy-in from the stakeholders to support your IDMP program or IDMP journey. Evaluate your current XCV-MPD process, evaluate your current XCV-MPD data, because EMEA will be using your current XCV-MPD data, and that's the data that they do plan to migrate to the PMS. So I think that's very important and to bear in mind. And also, to kind of define your overall submission strategy as part of the EMEA targeting operating model, whether it's going to be centralized, decentralized, or CAP submissions or non-CAP submissions. So I think these are the key activities that you can start looking into.
Great, thanks, Hardik. The next question I see coming through here is, so how many fields do we need to consider for IDMP submissions that are going to happen in 2022?
I can take this, Hardik.
Okay, sure.
That's fine with you. So
yeah, sure.
there are approximately about 145 data elements, to be considered as part of IDMP iteration 1, depending on your product portfolio. And, I say approximate because, there are some conditional fields and there are some optional fields based on chapter 2 of the implementation guide. So if you haven't seen chapter 2 yet, that outlines the required and conditional fields that is for PMS iteration 1.
Looking here, the next question I see is, will EMA provide any trainings on IDMP?
Do you want me to take that, Kim?
Go ahead.
Probably yes. As of yet, EMEA has not obviously communicated anything around the training sessions. We're still waiting for the notification around clock start. So I assume, there would be some form of communication from the EMEA for the training session. And from the past experience around the Article 57, I believe there would be some kind of interactive training session from the EMEA near the time of enforcement. Mainly around the user interface, because not many companies like the small size or mid-size companies will have the infrastructure to put the technology in place in support of the IDMP submission. So they have to use the user interface, built by the EMEA. So as I said, near the time, EMEA will publish something around the training sessions as well.
Thanks, Hardik. So at this time, that's going to be all that we have time for here today. We really want to make sure that we thank you all for spending some time with us, your participation. And we want you guys to know that the team at Red Nucleus, we really are different. We have the subject matter experts in IDMP, along with the strategy and change capabilities that we definitely need, that you need to have a holistic solution. So our contact information is up there. If we didn't get a chance to answer your question on the call today, we will be making sure that we do get in contact with you offline, so don't worry, your question will be answered. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be available directly after today's session at rednucleus.com. So please feel free to visit and share with your colleagues. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Kim and Hardik to say goodbye.
Sure. No, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you, everyone, again, for your active participation and for making time to see us today, and wish you all a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.